So this is the second message in a series. So we started last week called Merging Two Worlds, Celestial Spirituality and Earth-Based Spirituality. And just to briefly define, last week we didn't try to merge them, we just defined them. The celestial spirituality is just a term that I put together to conjure the notion of how monotheistic Christianity and all the Abrahamic religions, in fact, have over the years embraced the idea of a God above, of heavenly beings, of going up into the skies as our destiny. And it's kind of taken that attention away from the here and now, the material world, the ground we walk on, the environment we try to pollute or not to pollute. Do you get what I'm saying? Celestial spirituality is kind of the extreme notion of what we have developed as a tradition of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Okay? Is it understood? Okay, so then the earth-based spirituality are those faiths that are called, we could consider primal religions that find the sacred in nature. But more about that later. And why are we doing this? Because superstition and prejudice have lingered in the prevailing attitudes and notions that we have held culturally. And the intention of this series is to dissolve any mistrust or judgment of the vast array of what we call pagan or heathen traditions. You know, Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, always taught that there is truth in all religions. I have a little story to tell about this. So as a little girl, I followed my mother around everywhere, and I heard her pitch unities to all kinds of different people. And she always was successful in selling it. She always got people to say, oh, that sounds good. I want to come and be part of that. I thought I would try that with somebody. Because one of the things she would say was, well, in Unity, we teach that there's truth in all religions. And people would say, oh, well, I'm in with that. I love that. I'll come. So I'm talking to one of my daughter's friends, family mother one day. She says, so I hear you're a minister's daughter. And I said, yeah. Well, what faith is it? I said, Unity. We teach that there's truth in all religions. Trying to not be foreign to this woman. She says, I could never accept that. Say, well, it worked for my mom. Why didn't it work for me? Because she knew who to say it to. That's why. Anyway, I try. So remember the four families of faith that we talked about last week. This is a very good way to avoid to get around the fear, avoid the fear and superstition that keep separateness alive. And the four families of faith are the monotheistic traditions, which find the sacred in covenanted community. That's us, basically. And our covenanted communities are our laws. Okay. And then the primal religions find the sacred in nature. The Asian religions find the sacred in consciousness experience within. Buddhism, Confucianism, Hinduism. And then the freedom religions find a new birth of spirituality, find the sacred afresh in everything. I think that's where we fit in. What do you think? Yeah. The four families of faith recognize how different societies experience the sacred. And the primal religions are the earth-based spirituality that we're talking about. And here's how this plays out in our daily lives. This is where intolerance shows up day to day, is if you encounter an individual who says that they practice witchcraft, can you make a heart connection with that person? It's really no different than them saying that they practice transcendental meditation. And then you can come back and say, well, we practice meditation in the silence in unity. We concentration, revelation, and then gratitude. And they, oh, you do. And well, we practice, similar aspects because, folks, the dynamics of consciousness are universal. They just have different names. And the name of our organization is Unity. That means we have no barrier, no wall between ourselves and any other movement or teaching that is sourcing people to something transcendent. So today we're exploring the earth-based spirituality of the American Indian, or the so-called Native Americans. How lucky was it that while I was writing this sermon, some people visited the office to get a booth in the craft fair who were part Native American. Pointed out to me that you can't even name us without using a Western European designation. America is from Western European nomenclature. What is the name of this land that was originally occupied by the indigenous people? It's been lost. So, how many of you have heard of the language camp that's put on by the Anishinaabe tribe of the Chippewa? It's given at the Little Blue River area near because they run the casino up there. Have you heard of it? Have you been? I went to 2 of them. And what I learned, I really can't really put into words too well, but just a sense of the vibe that they hold such reverence for all of nature, and that they have ways of being in community that are so healing, that hold each other in sacred esteem and community. But I'll talk more about that in a minute. But theologically, you could make a case that the Native American spirituality is closer to unity teachings than is traditional Christianity. Because theologically, the kinds of theology in college, in the academic world, there's monotheism, which is the Abrahamic, there's polytheism. There's many different gods, but these gods, we find, as we get more and more esoteric, that there are spiritual entities that govern the different domains of the material world, of the natural world, I mean to say. So then there is pantheism, which says that God is everything that you see. And then there is panentheism, which is, strictly speaking, what unity is, which says that God is the creator and sustainer of the universe and is the universe itself. Both and, which I think that's just such a beautiful idea, but we never use the word panentheism, do we? No, but they tell you that in ministerial school. So the Indian nations throughout the Western Hemisphere all shared a common feeling of reverence and awe for their environment. Their ceremonies were a group experience of expanded consciousness. We are including these experiences more and more in progressive spiritual communities. All the churches, including Unity, are having drumming and chanting, tribal dancing, using tribal solutions to community questions. Developing the skills of consensus is a beautiful thing. But now, what about the medicine man? That's kind of a hokey term, but you know what that means. It's really a shaman, a type of shaman. And this is an individual who takes on the responsibility of correcting anything that goes wrong in people's hearts, in people's experience. He takes responsibility for anyone who sort of goes off the rails, so to speak. And So I want to talk about shamanism itself for a moment. The shaman is the one who sees the energetic dynamics going on, not just the drama of the moment at the superficial level. It's someone who sees the emotional undercurrents in the psychology of the collective and the group. It's someone who feels psychic occurrences, you see, of the individual and of the community. Do we have such a role in our conventional societal roles? I don't think so. Although many people are coming forward because they are experiencing these sensitivities. When there was a trauma, then a shaman was the person who healed the trauma so that it could not continue as a poison, you see, to contaminate future experiences. So let me give an example of what I mean by that. Like, let's say a child in the tribe, their mother died of some wound or some infection or some insect bite, but unexpectedly. And so that child then experiences a loss that can wound them for the rest of their life, but the shaman goes in, and by virtue of their imagination and their compassion, they're able to create some kind of experience for that child that pries them out of the grief and sorrow and loss and pain so that they can continue their life in wholeness. And one of the things that we know of that the shaman does, beautiful things, is they explain that, well, a piece of your soul came off, and now I'm blowing it back into you. And they go like this, And the shaman has the authority to do that. And so do we all. Only if we know we do. We do. So this is something that we could benefit from, that we could borrow and emulate. Because in the monotheistic world, they became so wrapped up in their story and their beliefs and judgments that unhealthy dynamics have been allowed to persist even as a society, even as a culture, religiously as a culture. But unity is an antidote to all that. Do you get that? We're the ones, we're not the only ones, but who do work in subconscious conditioning and reprogram our subconscious minds and cleanse the memory banks that we hold and replace negative energies with positive energies. Same thing, you see. As such, unity is in a beautiful alignment with the primal brand of spirituality. Now, how many of you know that Charles was abducted? Mr. Fillmore, our co-founder. He was born on an Indian reservation. His father was an Indian agent, and in his childhood, he was abducted, taken to the tribe camp, and kept there for a period of time. And it just occurred to me this week as I was considering that, well, perhaps these people, these Indians, saw in this child the promise of the great things that he was to do. They saw the potential in him, and they wanted to bring him into their midst to celebrate him, to bless him, to confer on him a blessing and an honoring. I think that's entirely possible because they would have had the capacity to perceive that about a child, to see the specialness. So unity teachings kind of do come out as in the same way that Indian teachings come out. When I was with the language camp of the Anishinaabe tribe, they talk about living the beauty way. And unity teachings are living practices, practical Christianity. It's kind of like, if you know this, then you will do this. If you know that the soul is eternal, and that the body is just the raiment, it has no significance, then you will not feel sorrowful if your loved one passes on to the next realm. And you will not be worshiping the remains of their physical form. No. You see. So maybe we can come away today with the idea that each of us has a shaman in us. That a healer, a person with compassion and imagination. And from that, to have the ability to confer wholeness on anyone and anything. We can know that we have the same power that the medicine man has, the same compassion that the shaman has, because we are all connected to the same source. We are all connected to the one mind, the allness that is God. Amen. Thank you. So as we sit here in this energy of sacred communion, we find rest in the silence. And so let us take our affirmation together in our program folder. I'll say it one time, and we can speak it together. I see the presence of the divine in everything. Together. I see the presence of the divine in everything. I see it in my own body, my heart, my mind. I see it in every person in my life. I see it in every circumstance of my affairs. I see it beyond my own sphere, as far as existence goes, limitless, free, a light with the divine mind. And so now, as we wait for a time in the silence of our own souls, we are filled, renewed, healed at every level in the silence. Thank you, God, for the partnerships that we share, for the love that revolves, that circulates, that moves through everything. Thank you. And so it is. Amen.